Hazrat Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he went and at the age of 5, Imam Ali alayhi salam moved in with Prophet Muhammad. And we had mentioned in our discussion that Imam Ali was raised by the Prophet. Yani, he grew up in the household of Prophet Muhammad. And as we had mentioned last night, some of these quotes from Imam Ali, where he makes it very clear that his relationship to Prophet Muhammad, being raised in the household of Prophet, being loved for, cared for, and trained by Prophet Muhammad, that certainly this would create X amount of envy in the hearts of some people that surrounded Imam Ali and were early Muslims and would have seen this relationship. And even Imam Ali, he made it very clear in numerous letters, not just to Muawiyah, because like I think last night we used one of the letters of Muawiyah as an example, where Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam was describing his position with Prophet Muhammad. And one of the things he kept reiterating was, everyone knows my position with Prophet Muhammad. All of you know how much he loved me. He was saying things like this because it was common knowledge, his relationship with Prophet Muhammad. And the only reason that this aspect of Imam Ali's life isn't, you could say, quote unquote, common knowledge amongst the Muslims today, and I'm not talking about us followers of Ahl Bayt, I'm talking about Muslims as a whole, right? On the large. The only reason this knowledge isn't common knowledge today is because of that envy. So, last night we had talked about these phases of raising children. And we had mentioned that first 7 years of a child's life, from birth to the age of 7, then that child should be treated more or less as a prince or a princess in the home. And the closer that they get to the age of 7, then the more intense the training and the understanding of responsibilities and consequences comes into play for this child. So definitely from birth to 7, we take it a little bit easy. The closer we get to the age of 7, the more intense the training gets. From 7 to 14, we had said, this is that time of intense training, tarbiyat for that child, that the child should come to understand right and wrong, good and bad, and should be held accountable for consequences. And this is where children learn and are trained in these aspects of life. And we had mentioned that last night. And one thing that we had mentioned that was very important last night that we'll continue this evening is, in the West, we don't train our children this way. We're kind of a little bit loose and slack with them. Maybe not in this first 7 years. We can be kind of rough with little kids in the West. I mean, I know the way I was raised. Alhamdulillah, our audience here is all Muslim families. May Allah bless you all. I had a grandmother who had the graduation process, When you were little, you got hit with her hand. And you got a little bit bigger and you got hit with the broomstick. And you got a little bit bigger and then you got hit with a electrical cord or an extension cord or something. And then when you got to a certain age, then you get hit with anything that falls in our hand. It could be a pot spoon. It could be anything. You get to an age where anything's on the table now. We had mentioned this, that beating children before the age of 7 is a very bad thing to do. It's a very wrong thing to do. Children should not be corporally punished, physically punished, until they can discern the reason why. It's very important that children understand about consequences. One of the times that it's allowed to hit children or to punish children physically is after this first 7 years, in that what we call that period of ubudiyat, right? Abdegi, bandegi, bardegi. Slavery, it's called, right? In the Islamic sources. From 7 to 14, the child is treated like a slave. That don't mean that we beat them incessantly or chain them up, but they're held accountable for tasks that are given them, and they're held accountable for consequences. And it's very important in this age. We do just the opposite. We might be a little rough with our kids for that first 7. And in that second 7, we kind of leave them alone. We don't think it's important to train kids at this time from 7 to 14. And in the West, when we want to start training the kids is exactly at the time when Islam is telling us, now your kid is trained. We want to start training the children at 14. And we think that the most important time for kids to be trained is between the ages of 14 to 21. Whereas Islam is showing us that from birth to 14 is way more important, way more fundamental to the training of and raising of a child than the 14 to 21. Inshallah, I think that we had covered this enough last night and this evening, so we can move on for this evening, inshallah. Send us salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, inshallah, these things settled into our minds, that we understand these different phases in the development, raising, and training of a child, age, birth to 7 and 7 to 14. This evening we want to talk about the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, in the household of Prophet, exactly between, and begin speaking about it. We won't talk about it all tonight. Tomorrow night we'll talk about some more. But we want to begin speaking about the adolescence of Imam Ali alayhi salam in the household of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It's a very important phase of life for all young people, adolescence. And last night we had mentioned this, and I don't think I'd said it in our recap for this evening. Traditionally speaking, what our ulama are saying is, if you do your job from birth to the age of 14 correctly, at the age of 14, you can say, this child, I'm done now. This child is who they're going to be. They're an adult now. And this is very important. We're going to talk about this tonight. We say this child is a young adult now. They've been trained. Now they need some guidance and some more training, but the job is pretty much done at 14. Even some of the ulama say, look, if you raise your child to the age of 14 and they're a good kid, alhamdulillah, your job is done. And if you get them to the age of 14 and they're a bad kid, then you make dua. They can come back. They can get reformed. They can come home. But don't think that you can make up for the first 14 years that you should have been training them in that last 7. So that's covered. Let's move on. Send the salawat, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. So Prophet raised Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam in his household from his childhood, really from his birth, unto his adolescence. And in his adolescence, I think that there's a lot of lessons for us in the way that Prophet and Imam Ali interact at this age and in this time that can be instructive for us, not just to show us how this envy that the people harbored against, some of the people harbored against Imam Ali, how it developed. And really what I'm doing is setting this set of speeches up for a set of speeches for Muharram. Because really where you see the envy on full display and the hatred on full display is at Karbala. But it's building in the lifetime of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And this evening we'll give you a few examples of that also from the adolescence of Imam Ali. So let's begin, inshallah. One of the first examples that I'd like, because I'm just trying to pick a few examples so we don't go too long. One of the first examples I'd like to show you this evening is from around the time that Imam Ali alayhi salam was about 13 years old. So we've covered his childhood, and now we're into his adolescence. And I know, sometimes we don't count 13-year-olds as adolescents, but they are. 13-year-old Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. Prophet invites his family members for the famous occasion of Da'wat Dul Ashira, right? If you remember, after the first revelations came down, the message of Islam was practiced, I'm not going to say in secret, because this makes it sound like people were hiding, and they weren't hiding. They weren't disguising themselves or anything like this. But I'm going to say that Islam was practiced in private. It's okay, it's just a car alarm. Everybody's wearing masks now, so the crime should be going up. Khair. Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam at the age of 13, really it's 3 years before this that Ba'asat comes, the first messages come. Prophet announces Islam to his family, his immediate family. Hazrat Khadija, Imam Ali accepts. And for 3 years, we don't want to say that they practice Islam in secret. I'm going to say they practice Islam in private. And then the command came down to warn your near of kin. And so Prophet says that what he's going to do is organize a function, a gathering, a meal for all of the elders to gather there, his family members and important people in the clan and in the tribe should attend this gathering. And at this gathering, Hazrat Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he will invite the people to Islam. This story is a deep, 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 deep story. And we're going to try to go over it as much of it as we can. So let's go. Da'wat Zul Ashira was a party, and I'm be honest with you, I forget how many people attended. I can't recall, but it was a fair number of people that have attended, and grown men too, and hungry people too. And Prophet Muhammad gave the job of organizing this entire gathering to Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. That means you need to go out and shop for the food, get the food, bring the food, cook the food. Right down to slaughtering the animal, cleaning the animal, killing the animal, and serving the food. Everything was in the hands of Imam Ali alayhi salam. So as we start the story, I want to explain this portion of it. A lot of times, and I was going to give like my little hints and pointers at the end, but we'll do it at the end of each story or during each story. Can any of us today imagine giving a 13-year-old the job to prepare a function this important, a gathering of adults to come, and the 13-year-old is to prepare the meal and get, like how we have like a team of people that prepare the masjid for the program. Some people clean, some people get it ready, other people cook, some people bring the food, and then still another group, set it up in the masjid so that it's ready to be served. All of that was Imam Ali's job at the age of 13. We'll make our point concerning this issue in a little bit. Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam was responsible for organizing that. Now, as you know, there were two functions like this. The first one that happened was broken up, right? And what they traditionally say what happened, what broke up the first meeting was the miracle of Hazrat Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Many times prophets have performed this miracle. It's one of the miracles that's like in the arsenal of prophets, that they have it on their utility belt, so to speak. This miracle is the ability to feed a great number of people with a little bit of food, right? And at Da'wat Dhul Ashira, this is exactly what happened. Imam Ali only killed one lamb. There's only one lamb killed. The food that was prepared there was enough for that, one lamb, right? And this group of tribesmen, and I'm not making fun of my Arab brothers and sisters, but Arabs can eat, right? And in those days, they were known that like a big grown Arab man will sit down and eat one sheep by himself. These guys sit down to this meal of one lamb and some rice and some food with it, and the food won't end. The more they eat, and this food isn't ending. And they get full, and the food is still there. And so one of the participants is like, yo, this is obvious sorcery. Let's get out of here. So they get out. Luckily, they're family members. Like, you have a leeway with family, Even they come to your house, they suspect you of sorcery. You can invite them back again. And that's exactly what Prophet did. Prophet invited them a second time. And again, he gave Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam the job, you prepare everything. And again, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam did it faultlessly. And apparently he could cook because these guys kept eating again. And this is where Hazrat Rasul gives that famous speech where he says, I've brought something to you that no other Arab has ever brought to his people. And he explains to them about the message of Islam, the oneness of Allah. He's the messenger of Allah. And then he calls out to his family members and he says, who will support me in this mission? So that he may be my successor and my inheritor in this life and the next. Nobody stands up. Nobody steps forward except one 13-year-old Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa. There's two things that can be said about this part of the story, where only Imam Ali stands up and answers the call of Prophet. Number one, the level of thinking of a 13-year-old that has been trained properly. Imam Ali has been trained in the household of Prophet, brought up and guided by him, and so he understands the greatness of the task that is before him. And he eagerly wants to participate in that. Sincerely, he steps forward and offers his services. How many 13-year-olds we know that are like that developed in our society to comprehend what's going on and then to say, I want a piece of that. Count me in. This is a huge deal. But this is also where you can see the seeds of that envy that have also been planted. A lot of times we read the story and we run right over it, right? But the people who were there begin saying to Abu Talib, oh, Abu Talib, look at this. Now your son has become your master. Because it was Imam Ali who accepted the Prophet's invitation. And Prophet announced, this is my successor and inheritor in this life and the next, and the master of you all. And they were like, whoa. They started to do maskhara, to make fun of Prophet, and particularly to make fun of Imam Ali and Hazrat Abu Talib. Why would they do such a thing? Envy. Envy. So from the first annunciation of the mission, and from the first time that Imam Ali is introduced as the successor and inheritor of Prophet, then he's confronted with this envy. And this is something for us to really pay attention to. So inshallah, let's give another example then of this interaction with Prophet and Imam Ali during his adolescence. Khair, send a salawat inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Khair. One of the things, after the announcement of the message, one of the things that the people of Mecca used to do to harass Prophet, to antagonize Prophet, to put some torture on him, is they would have the little kids in town, and not just the little kids, but the young people in town, the kids in town, even slaves and so forth, to follow Prophet around and throw stones at him, harass him, and do these type of things. Again, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, in the age of 13, 14, maybe as much as 15, but most people say it didn't even last that long, right? At this age, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam took it upon himself to volunteer. He wasn't asked to, nor was he even implied. He volunteers as Prophet Muhammad's protector. And really, it was a stroke of genius on the part of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. Why? Because when these kids come out to stone Prophet, right, what can Prophet do? At this time, it's not the time to turn around and engage with the children lovingly, right? Oh, Bacha Aziz, Naze, good kids, what's wrong with you? We love you. Why you? Now, when these kids are throwing stones and hurling insults at you, it's not the time to come out lovingly. Right? But at the same time, Prophet can't grab them by the ears and spank them and, rough them up and stuff. He's not only is he a prophet, but he's 40 years old. And these are like, at the most, kids maybe the age of Ali or a little younger and older also. So he can't like snatch them by their ears and beat them up and knock them around. So he's kind of stuck. Like, what do you do? How do you handle this situation? Imam Ali came with the perfect solution. Imam Ali began following Prophet around. And when they would start throwing stones at Prophet, hurling insults at Prophet, then Imam Ali would pick out the biggest kid in the crowd. And oftentimes, this kid would be, and we're saying kid, right? But we're talking about adolescents. We're trying to make the cultural message here that these aren't kids anymore. They're young adults that are still in need of training and guidance, but they're young adults, right? But we're going to call them kids just because it's our culture. Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam would pick out one of these bigger kids, and he wouldn't fight with the little ones. He'd always choose the big ones, even fighting kids that were older than him, to the point where it's mentioned in some riwayat, he got a name as ear biter. And really, Because when he'd be tussling with these bigger kids, sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get over on these big kids. And believe me, Imam Ali got over on these big kids. The stoning and harassing of Prophet stopped because of Imam Ali being there and being ready to confront the first person, the biggest person with a stone in their hand, then they'd have to deal with Imam Ali. And his reputation was such, just to show you an example, right? Years later in life, when he was the Khalifa, right? He was actually addressed in public once by one of these kids who said, "Hey, earbiter." Yani reminding Imam Ali, and this to show you, right, that the envy never died. The jealousy, the hatred, it doesn't go away. They remember that they used to throw stones at Prophet. They remember that they used to follow him, and they also remember that the guy who would pounce on them and bite their ears if necessary was Ali ibn Abi Talib. So this was that adolescence of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, the position that as a young man he would choose for himself. One of the things we have to train our children to do is not just believe, but to think, to be brave, to stand up for what's right, to make decisions based on what's right and what's wrong. This is what we're preparing them for in this first 14 years of training and guidance, so that when they're 14 to 21, they can now make decisions on their own, correctly, inshallah. Sana salawat, I have another example for you, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The next example I have for you, it has to do with but shikani, the breaking of the idols. A lot of times when we talk about the smashing of the idols by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Imam Ali, we think about the conquest of Mecca. But it's said in the history books that actually the smashing of the idols occurred twice. Once before Hijrat, once before immigration, and once at the conquest of Mecca. And the story is thus. Once, a few years before Hijrah, so this would mean that Imam Ali alayhi salam would be in his later years of his teenage years. He's now no longer 13 or 14. He's probably maybe 15 to 17 years old, maybe a bit older when this event happens, but certainly in his later teenage years. The Quraysh came with a new idol, and they placed it on top of the Kaaba. And Prophet decided he was going to do something about it. And so he called for Imam Ali. And one night, him and Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali, they go to Kaaba. And this is before Hijrah. Prophet wants to teach Imam Ali something. And so he says, Ali, stand here. Let me get on your shoulders and I'll go up on Kaaba and throw down the idol. So, Prophet's 40 years old plus at this time, right? Imam Ali is a teenager, okay? And so Prophet gets on the shoulders of Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali. And Ali sees that he cannot bear the weight of Prophet. And really, it's something funny, right? These young guys, I've got teenage sons. They think they can wrestle and they think they're tough, right? But their bones are still soft, right? Even though you might weigh as much as me, as an example, because I got a big son, he weighs as much as me, right? Your bones ain't hard and tough as this one, man. When I grapple with them, it's like you got a bag of chicken bones in your hand, you know? There's a difference between a grown man's weight and muscle mass and density in his body to a young man. So Prophet gets on Ali's back, on Ali's shoulders, right? And Ali sees he can't bear the weight of Prophet. And so what happens? Prophet comes down and says, Ali, you get on my shoulders then. So Ali gets on the shoulders of Prophet. And Ali himself says, when I got on the shoulders of Prophet, I felt like I was flying on top of the world. Like when Prophet pushed me up to get on top of the Kaaba, it shows Imam Ali something, and it's an instruction to each of us with our children at this age. Our children have to learn that you can do anything, but you can only make it happen by standing on the shoulders of those who will support you, of those who can support your weight. You will only achieve great things by rising up on the shoulders of those who came before you, of those who've trained you, of those who've guided you. And it's an important lesson that Prophet is teaching to Imam Ali in this incident, important lesson also for us to learn when we're raising our children. We have to let go at a certain time and let them get involved. But they won't be able to achieve much unless we're there to support them and to push them forward, and that they recognize that they have to stand on our shoulders. So Prophet pushes Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam up onto the roof of the Kaaba. They had fixed this idol to the roof of the Kaaba. I don't know, maybe with nails or something, right? So at first, Imam Ali, he couldn't pick it up and move it. It was difficult to move it. Prophet has to tell him, rock it from side to side, Ya Ali. Rock it. Rock it until it gets loose. Again, this is a lesson for us, right? Young people might be strong and they may be willing. But even in adolescence, they need the training and guidance of their elders. So Prophet tells him, Ali, rock it from side to side. Move it from side to side. And this is the way that Imam Ali is able to get this idol loose and throw it down from the roof of the Kaaba and smash it on the ground below. Imam Ali comes down and Prophet and Imam Ali escape. And from what we understand, they were never implicated in this ordeal, but I have a feeling that they were very likely suspects in Mecca. It was just a lack of evidence that probably had them get away with it like full, you know. So in these incidences, we learn something about the relationship between Prophet and Imam Ali, and something that we need to take away for when raising our own children as well. So let's go over that as we finish up for this evening. Send us salawat. In our society, we call 13, 14-year-olds kids. And the only reason that they are kids and act like children is because we've failed to do the job training them and educating them in that first 14 years of their life. And I mean, I can show you a couple examples, practical examples in our contemporary world where we're coddling our children, extending their childhood, and robbing them of experiences of young adulthood, simply by treating them like kids. So I'll give you two examples. Y'all been to Ziyarat before. You go to Iraq and you run into these kids that are street sellers, right? And these kids are tough. And they can sell. They know business. He might be doing nothing but selling sweets or cigarettes or this or that. But that little kid is a hustler. And he may know more about business than a lot of the people that we got here running businesses. And we go for ziyarat in some of these countries. You see these little kids and you be like, man, these suckers are sharp. Like, why can't my kids count like this guy can? This guy's selling cigarettes in the street and he can count like a son of a gun. Or another example that's a little more close to spirituality and to our growth as a people. You look at the example of the Islamic Revolution. At first, they were very, and I don't want to say at first, the Islamic Republic was always very careful never to allow quote-unquote child soldiers, right? But you know what ended up happening? I mean, it happened to a few of my teachers. Young men from across Iran would run away from home and then falsify the papers that they needed to join in the military. I mean, famous speaker that everyone knows about, Hajar Panahian, right? Him and his brother snuck away in their early teenage years, falsified their paperwork so that they could join the military, the Basij. and then spent the next 8 years on the front line. And this is one of our great contemporary scholars, great contemporary speakers. He doesn't strike us at all that he has any PTSD or anything that's gone wrong with him from sneaking away at a young age, falsifying paperwork, and spending the entire war on the front lines. In fact, in one of the jalasat that we had with him when I was in Iran, he said that him and his brother used to hate to come back from the front. That when they came back from the front and they went back to home, to the neighborhood, people were arguing over the price of bread. The line was too long. The people had all these ordinary complaints. And they were like, on the front lines, we're facing death every day. Every night it's dua. Every morning it's salat. Every day it's zikr, right? And so you were living in a different place on the front lines. And they said coming back to town was depressing. I mean, it's amazing. And you see this repeated. I mean, one of the greatest heroes of the revolution is Fahmideh, who was what, 14 years old? You know, when we look at our young people, we have to realize that these young people have a great deal of potential. And that by us not doing our job in training them and educating them and preparing them for adulthood, we've robbed them of X amount of that potential. We're treating them like kids when they're 13, 14, 15 years old, whereas they're ready to grow. They're ready to volunteer for big adult-like tasks. They're ready to take on adult responsibilities. They're eager to be involved in these big things. And when we hold them back from that, saying, you're a kid still, and you keep telling the person, this young adult, you keep telling this young adult, you're a child, you're just a kid. So why do you think that these 18-year-olds act like kids? Because we've been telling them, you're just a kid. And even when they become 21, we're still telling them, you're just a kid. No, these are young adults. So we should understand something. Quran says that the age of maturity for a human being is the age of 40. Yeah. Yeah, you become, baligh at, this age of anywhere between 10 and 14, right? For males or females, right? But to be fully mature, like at the peak of the life, the maturity, age 40, says Quran. So these who are 13, 14, 15, 17, 21, they're young adults. And it doesn't mean that you're done with their training. You don't have anything to do with them. They still need training. They still need guidance. But now they need to be trained and guided in accepting the responsibilities of adulthood. And we don't do that with our young people at this age. And one of the faults that we have in raising our children and in our communities is that we extend the childhood of young people, and we call them kids till they're 18. Whereas we should be training them to be thinking and accepting adult responsibilities from the age of 14, insha'Allah. We'll finish up with one last example just to drive this message home. Hazrat Qasim, alayhi salam, the son of Imam Hassan, alayhi salam. At Karbala, Hazrat Qasim was in this same age group, 13, 14 years old. And I want you to see the difference in how young people think who have been prepared for adulthood, who are ready to accept the responsibilities of adulthood, and between what we're raising today. On the night before Yom Ashura, Imam Hussein announced that tomorrow all of you will be martyred. And the first question that comes into Qasim's mind is, does my uncle mean me also? And so he asks, because it could be that his uncle only means the grown men, like his uncle Abbas, or like Hussein, or like his cousin Ali Akbar, right? Maybe he only means these big people. Maybe he doesn't mean me too. So Qasim asks, And this to show you the maturity level of Hazrat Qasim. Yes, will I also be made Shaheed? And we all know the famous reply of Imam Hussein. He says, what's your opinion of Shahadat? And Qasim replies, Ahla min al asal. It's sweeter to me than the taste of honey. Look, this isn't something that Qasim is parroting, that he heard from someone else. This isn't that Qasim is imitating what he's seen someone else do. This is Qasim. He sat and he thought for a moment before he gave this answer. This is Qasim thinking like a young adult that's been trained and one who has guidance. You know, Hazrat Qasim was raised, and before I go, I really do have to mention one more thing. Hazrat Qasim was raised in the house of Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein was like a second father to him. And this is why it reminded me to mention this thing. We can't just focus on the young people, that they have to be trained and guided. One thing I have to mention before we finish for this evening is fathers. I forgot to mention a little bit earlier, but we have to go back and mention it. One of the things that's very important in life that our society and culture is suffering from is daddy. We all know the importance of mommy, but the role of a father in a child's life, any child's life, male or female, is irreplaceable. Because this father's role, when we look at, and there's lots of roles that fathers have, but we're just going to focus in on this one, is that fathers teach boundaries. Fathers establish this concept of consequences and responsibility in our lives. Mothers shower us with love and affection and make us feel secure and give us some self-esteem and make us feel loved. Daddies make us not get arrogant with that love, not reach too far with that esteem. Daddies establish boundaries. And one of the things that our young people are suffering from in our culture and in our society that's affecting their adolescence is that we don't have any fathers around, and we don't have enough fathers around to give the guidance and the training to these young people in how to be adults. And there's one thing that we see in Prophet and Imam Ali's interaction. Prophet was as a father to Imam Ali. And in every step of the way, he provides that strength, that support, that guidance, that training, in addition to the guidance that he was getting from Abu Talib. Prophet provides that guidance almost like a second father. And this aspect of this relationship between these two cannot be understated. And the same for our relationship with our children and in our families, right? We have to, because the role of father is greatly diminished in Western society. And we as Muslims, as followers of Ahl Bayt, the household of Prophet, we have to support the role of fathers and uphold the role and the honor of fathers within their household to guide and to train these adolescent children, because really no one else can prepare them for the world other than their fathers. I think we've done enough for this evening, huh? We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should have mercy on our souls. Ya Allah, forgive us of our sins. Guide us to your straight path. Set firm our feet in your path. Strengthen our limbs in your service. Hasten the appearance of your Imam and make us his helpers and supporters upon his return. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. So if there's any questions or answers, please send them in, inshallah.
So question number one that was asked, and if you could also please repeat this,
Yeah.
is that I'm sure you've heard of the expression, it takes a village to raise a child. If a child has both working parents but still has influential role models, such as grandparents, aunts, uncles, aren't they still gaining direct Islamic values and helping them to grow through their formative years? Meaning, does it have to be the parents? Could others take the role of the parents?
So the question was, sometimes parents are working full time, but there are other positive Islamic role models like grandparents, grandmother, grandfather. Is this sufficient? Does this take the role? I'm going to say no. Not always. It's very good that we have grandmothers and grandfathers, aunts and uncles. It does take a village to raise a child, and it's very good that we have these people who can help us out. Nothing can replace their help. Alhamdulillah, we thank Allah for that. That's a good aspect of our community. However, nothing can replace the love of a mother. Huh? And especially in these formative young years, in these first 7 years of life, and I mean throughout their life, but we're talking about just in emphasis. In these first 7 years of life, nothing can replace the love and attention of a mother. You know, and I'm going to go even so far and make some trouble for myself. A lot of ladies don't breastfeed anymore. Nothing can replace that fruit of a woman's heart. This soy milk is not doing it. Okay, this formula, Similac, man, that's bad for y'all's kids. And you wondering why we're raising beasts and monsters in our society. It's because they don't get no love sitting in their mama's lap, breastfeeding and gazing into their mama's eyes, right? So we need this. We need these things. We need mama when these kids are young, and we need mama at home. And we need daddy at home, just like mama, all the time in the family, but especially when these kids are getting in this age from 7 to 14 and 14 on to 21, father's guidance has to be there. Nothing can replace a father. A grandfather is wonderful, but cannot replace a father. A grandmother is fantastic, but cannot replace a mother. And I just want to throw this out here when we talk about both parents working. I think we mentioned this last night. We have to change the way we're living. Both parents cannot work all the time. It's hurting our families. Mommy has to be home with those kids in those formative years. And we said this last night. When those kids start going to school, if mommy wants to go try to find a little job or a career and do something for herself, maybe from home or in conjunction with daddy, that's the time to do that, but not before that. And her time should still be dedicated to her family. If she goes to work, she goes to work when the kids go to school, and she gets home either before they get home or around the time they get home, because we cannot undervalue the role of mommy in the house. This is how we create human beings. So just to answer the question very quickly, grandma and grandpa, aunties and uncles are great, but they cannot take the place of mommy and daddy, just like Similac can't take the place of real life mama feeding. Khair.
Question number 2, how can we practically prepare our kids for the real world? Right? What is that?
How can we practically prepare our kids for the real world? Then we have to put them in real world situations. So like, for instance, sometimes we give kids allowance, but with no expectation. Like, my kids don't get no allowance unless you work. If you don't do your job, how are you going to get paid? And if you half do the job, you only get half paid. Like, how are you going to half do the job and get full pay? It's ridiculous. And the allowance has to be low. How are you going to give your kid some big allowance? No, you got to struggle. You got to start small, get a little bit of money, and work your way up. I'm not going to start you on a big allowance. I'm going to start you on a small allowance and make you work hard to work your way up. So we have to put them in real life situations. We have to give them real life choices to make and make them understand also consequences. People always ask for examples when I mention this, right? And I can't give you any examples. It's going to come to you at the right place. Like, one example I give from my own life is, you know, the Bukhari that they have in Iran? And the fire burns in the bottom of it. My kids always wanted to go touch the fire. And my wife would always stop them. And I got sick of it. I said, stop stopping them. Let them touch it. She said, no, but they're going to get burnt. Yes. They're going to get burnt. And you know what? The first time they touch that hot glass is also the last time they touch that hot glass. They get burnt the first time and they never mess with the Bukhari ever again. And we have to repeat this style of instruction, at least that's what I do, throughout their lives, at different phases in their life. They have to face the real world before we set them into the real world completely on their own. You know, so I live by the theory that we should consistently throw them into hardship. I mean, at every chance we get, at every turn, my job is to make your life hard and then also help you out of the hardship. Huh? So this is my job. I'm here to just completely turn things upside down and then also help you how to figure it out. So this is what I tell people to do as far as how can we get them prepared for a real life. Introduce them to real life situations, inshallah.
Another question is, why were the Prophet's relatives envious when they had a chance to actually help the Prophet?
Why were they envious? Because, yes. So the question was, why were some of Prophet's family members and even companions envious when they had a similar opportunity to assist and to help and to volunteer at various stages in the process? The answer is because they didn't. I mean, it's real simple. They were envious because they did not jump forward. They didn't have the confidence. They didn't have the faith. They didn't have the strength, the self-esteem, whatever you want to call it, that Prophet gave to Imam Ali. They didn't have that. They didn't have what Ali had. And what did we say? What did we say envy was? When you're discontent and hateful of someone because of a possession or a quality that they may have that you don't have. They were not envious of Ali's possessions. So let's get that out of the way, okay? They weren't envious of Ali because he had money or because he had the nice horse or this or that. Ali didn't start making any money until sometime after Khaybar. After Khaybar is where Ali's financial situation gets a lot better. Before Khaybar, Ali's pretty much broke. Okay? So people were not envious of Ali's possessions. What they were envious of with Imam Ali were his qualities. And so they did have the same opportunities, but they never took advantage of it. And it burned them that this young man was the one who would consistently step forward, and not just step forward, but get the job done. And this must have burnt them. I mean, I've got a few good examples for you tomorrow night, right? When we talk about his later adolescent years and going into his early 20s. Because Imam Ali would have been about 23 years old when Hijrah occurred, right? And tomorrow night we'll talk about some of those adventures at that time to show you how the hatred and the envy of the people was even increased. But they were envious because of his qualities that they lacked. Yeah.
Another question is that divorce is rampant, or it has become rampant today.
Yeah.
Okay, some people, they're in a position where they need to choose a stepmom for their kids. What are the qualities that they can look for in terms of picking a stepmom?
Picking a stepmom.
That's a tough one. I know it's a good question.
Yes. So divorce is the question is, divorce is rampant in our community today. And sometimes we're in a position where we have to look for another spouse, whether, and I hate this term stepmother or stepfather, right? But we have to find another spouse. And do we have any pointers on how to find suitable quote-unquote stepmother? And I'm going to expand it also to quote-unquote stepfather. And I'm going to throw it out there. Please don't pick them the way you picked the first one. Now I'm going to make trouble with y'all. I mean, you royally screwed up that first situation, didn't you? And now you want to go choose another one? So, look, when you choose any spouse, whether it's the first one or the second one, and whether they're consecutive or whether they're pushte sare hamdigar, right? Then what you want to do is you want to choose a spouse based on their iman, based on their family, because you can tell a lot about a person by who their mother and father is, right? So you want to choose based on religion, based on family, and then, I mean, there's a few more criteria that can be added in there, you know, social status, whether they're attractive to you or not, because this is also important, right? They have to be attractive. You can't say I can't live with this person, you know, like difficult to look at. So it's the same criteria for picking any good spouse, right? But I'm just going to throw this out here to make more trouble. You're not going to find a mommy to take the place of your ex-wife. It's not. One of the reasons I tell people not to get divorced, solve your problem, work on the issue, is because you will never find someone to take mommy's position. You will never find someone to take daddy's position. Ever. That stepdaddy will never love your children as much as they daddy do. That stepmommy can never show as much affection to those children as their mommy can. And so we should be very careful about jumping around and instigating divorces when there's really no need for them, because most of the cases that appear before me about divorce, it's absolutely unwarranted. There's no need for it, So, quit jumping around and having all these baby mamas and baby daddies and all this wackiness y'all got going on, following step by step in the footsteps of the kuffar. You got 6 kids and 7 baby daddies. Baba, stop it. Get married, stay married, work it out. And if you need to get married again, stay married and work it out. And raise your children in a complete household, inshallah. Let's move on.
Question is, what do you recommend doing tonight for A'mal? Because tonight is the 23rd, inshallah, Laylatul Qadr. Any specific recommendations that you would give from a spiritual perspective?
Yes, definitely. You go and you look. Oh, so the repeat of the question, what do we recommend to do A'mal tonight for Laylatul Qadr? I recommend you all, you go in Mafatihul Jinan and you see what's recommended for the 23rd night, and you do as much of it as is possible. I don't have any special recommendation. I usually do that same thing. I got Mafati on my tablet and I go there. Now listen, I know a lot of times like what's listed in Mafati can be very long and you say, oh my God, I can't do it all. Do some of it. Do most of it. Do as much of it as you can. The only thing that I do different from Mafati is I try to use Layali al-Qadr. Let's be honest with ourselves. Sometimes we miss Salat. During the term of the year, during the course of the year, we miss Salat. And we may forget to make it up, like we miss a Fajr and we go straight to work. We miss a Dhuhr and Asr while we're at work, and when we come home, we forget about it. These things do happen. Layali al-Qadr in my household, one thing I try to do for myself and encourage other people to do is, make up some of those salats that you might owe in these nights, anything that you might owe Allah. Try to make it up in these Layali al-Qadr. That's the only thing that I do other than what Mafati says. We're converts to Islam. We don't really have a culture yet. We just do what Mafati al-Jinan tells us to do.
And just 2 points. Duas.org also has the A'mal.
Oh, Duas.org also has those
And also,
A'mal.
if you go on Sabah Center, they have a live stream with all of that programs for the whole night.
So brother also says if you go on Sabah Center's website, what is Sabah.org? YouTube.
Sabah Center.
Sabah Center, they have the A'mal all night long. So you can check that out, inshallah.
We'll send a link for that as well.
There'll be a link put up for that as well.
And one more question is, a child being a prince means that we don't enforce any sort of punishment for bad behavior, for example? That's a question. Also, should we emphasize any sort of education during the first 7 years?
Of course, we emphasize education. Children. Oh, yeah, to repeat the question. The question was asked, when we say that a child should be treated like a prince or princess during these first 7 years, does that mean that they get no education? Or that does that mean that they get no physical punishment, no punishment for when they do bad? So I'm going to just throw this out there. At the lower end of this range before 7, right? Let's just say 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5. Your kids can't be bad. I'm going to just throw this out there. There's no such thing as a bad 2-year-old. Brother Wahid might disagree, but it's true. There's no such, we call them the terrible 2s, but it's really not them being terrible, right? The fact that they love to pull all the pots out of the cupboard and beat on them, they're not evil. They're just kids. So really below this age of 5, I personally don't believe kids they're not bad. They can't do bad. They're not evil, and they should not be spanked. They just don't know. They just don't know. And so they have to be spoken to, not beaten. Explained to. No, baby, we don't do that. No, baby, don't go outside. You could get hurt. We should never use fear to train them. Like, don't go outside. Monsters will get you. That's terrible. We're going to raise cowards. That's why a lot of the kids is cowards now, right? Because we tell them, monsters under your bed is going to get you. And they grow up with fears in them, right? So we want the kids to grow up strong. We want them to grow up fearless. And when we beat kids below a certain age, All it teaches the kid is that might is right. I tell you, hey, stop doing that. And you don't stop doing that. And then I hit you, bayaw. That means that if you don't listen, might is right. And I will force my will on you. That's a terrible thing to teach kids. So we want to raise them in a way. So as far as physical punishment is concerned, we physically punish kids when they get to an age where they can tell right from wrong and they know better. And it has to be something serious, Baba. Not some childish something. That's when we sit down and talk to them and make it straight to them. And we deal with these children at this age from love. So, yeah, that's as far as punishment. As far as education, of course you educate them. From the time that this child is born, it's being educated by watching you and imitating you. And from the moment that they start moving around and talking, they're being educated. And from the time that they start forming sentences and recognizing what's going on around them, you can also start teaching them about, as we said, I think it was last night or night before, about Allah, about Tawheed, about all of these things. There's nothing that they can't learn about. You just have to explain it to them in an appropriate fashion. But kids understand deep philosophical notions better than you would think they would. You talk to them about an unseen Allah, and that's easy for them to understand. You talk to them about prophets and prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's easy for them to understand. You talk to them about mu'jizat and karamat and miracles, it's easy for them to understand. It's me and you who've become jaded and cynical and sarcastic that we're blinded now, right? But these kids, their hearts are open, their eyes are open, and they learn perfectly. And I'll just give one example right before we finish with that one. Our kids learn songs on Sesame Street and stuff so easy, right? They watch that Sesame Street and they learn whatever song's playing on the TV, Caillou, whatever show's going on. They learn that easy, don't they? Huh? Teach them some Quran. Play Quran for them and see how easy they'll learn that. Huh? These kids are sponges. So of course there's education in these years, alhamdulillah, inshallah.
Is there any specific education that you would recommend though? Like any topic or any subject?
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, the only thing that I can think of off the top of my head is that, as I mentioned before, when that child starts to act out and to not act out in a bad way, but starts to pretend to be an adult, starts to play these type of games, these are the times that you can see their imagination is working. They're understanding what the future will hold for them. That's why they're pretending to be an adult, and they're striving for that. They're anxious for that. That's why they're pretending. This is a marker in a child's life. Because, before that, they're kind of little and just kind of playing. But this age comes where they start imitating adults, right? And it's at this age that they say that now you can start, teaching them about religion and these things, because they're starting to open up and to understand who they are, and most importantly, who they are to be. Huh? And so this is a good time, a marker, to start training them in all of these things, inshallah. Khair, inshallah. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should hear our dua faraj, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل الساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل فرجه.